Um, on that topic, I will just say have seen a small collection of YouTube of Twitter feeds from video game companies putting out their Memorial Day. I want to say pandering. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with pandering as a description, and I will just say it's important to recognize that corporations aren't people. They don't care about veterans. Uh, And so anything they say is done to just artificially create good vibes in your brain associated with their brand and does to make you potentially purchase more things that you don't need to purchase from them. And yeah, even if employees think it isn't that way, employees of that company, it's that way. Yeah. And that don't let naivety fall onto you. So here we have a Dominaria pack. I probably don't have very many Dominaria packs. I also purchased a sleeve that was like 800 gold. It's pretty stupid to purchase a sleeve, but it was like a sleeve that I think only sells for gyms. So kind of seems like a good deal. All of these are like 4,000 gold. And I'm fairly certain I didn't pay that much. Maybe I paid 1,000. It's stupid to buy sleeves, certainly, but whatever. I just want to kind of keep this list from growing exponentially large as time goes forward. But it may still do that because Magic does seem like it's just going to constantly get more and more expensive. And I definitely am not going to delve down into the realm of getting skins. So let's open this Dominaria card pack. No real surprise here that all of these packs are new cards. If you in the real world could buy older packs and they went on sale, if older packs in Magic in the real world and Paper Magic actually went on sale, that would be a very good deal because I imagine that pretty much never happens. You can see that of all those Dominaria cards, we literally now just have one copy of it. In fact, we could probably click here and see that this historic Dominaria card list pretty much is just that one pack with a couple of extras that we were given as rewards, I imagine. Whereas if we're gonna really start to go down the path of trying to get Dominaria cards, well, either something is wrong with this filter system, or yeah, something's real weird about that filter system now. It apparently will not let you have one copy highlighted and not collected highlighted at the same time. So it's no longer an or when it was an or before. Not collected or collected with one copy, two copy, three copies. That makes it very hard to look through this list now. They need to fix that. But yeah, you can see there's a decent amount of cards here. Let's see. We re-rolled this. We can't afford any drafts. We are just too broke for that. Maybe on Wednesday we'll have enough getting the daily quest. I didn't spend any time on the weekend playing this. Instead, I spent all the weekend still playing 999, 9 doors, 9 hours, 9 lives. The first of the nonary games, which nonary apparently means 9. And that visual novel multiple ending game, 999, just really punched me in the gut. I don't know how to put it any other way. Let's see, I guess we could play ranked here. We've got a little bit more time before the season ends, right? It doesn't even give you a countdown. So, yeah. So it really punched me in the gut because after getting a key to unlock what I assume is the good ending, the true ending, it added into its indicator, its flow system of just how the story is going to flow and how much left, how many more segments of the story there's going to be. It added, I would say, about 10 new nodules, 10 new points in a line after the point where I thought there was going to be, the story was going to be over. And it's just wrecking me, frankly. It's just taking forever. I'm doing 1.5 to 2 hour episodes, and in 2 hours you're barely getting anything that's really happening of any real note. And it just goes back and recaps and tries to wrap up things, and it goes back and it repeats things. And the writing's not great, but it's not as awful as you might think. But it's just so convoluted with having 9 characters, and each character having a lot of backstory written, and everything that looked like it was going to be a red herring turns out it's probably not a red herring, and they're making this very convoluted story to explain how the things that look like red herrings aren't actually red herrings, and that it all does make this concise, understandable story. They definitely went through this story with a fine-tooth comb to cover and explain away any plot holes, to the point where they've got a character that is blind, really just to explain why he wouldn't have done a few things, and then but they do that kind of for everything. There's almost an explanation for every single time a character just chooses not to do something that would have been incredibly smart, but perhaps not incredibly obvious. They still bother to make an explanation there, where it could just be chalked up to, oh, the author didn't think of it, or the character didn't think of it, and so they didn't do it. You don't really have to explain it that much. It's just incredibly time consuming, and it's put me at, I'm at right now 99.5% certain that I probably wouldn't want to ever play another visual novel game, just for how incredibly long this has been. Even though this is a half-voiced game, so half the time I don't have to read, and the other half of the time I can kind of skip over it and not bother to read it. And this puts me kind of in a bad position because I think I own the 3rd game in the series, and I know I own the 2nd game in the Nonary game series because it was bundled with the 1st game, but I have no idea how I'm gonna play with that, and at what point I would get around to playing the sequels and trying covering it. As a Nintendo DS game and as a visual novel, I can't even really imagine who the proper audience for this is. Maybe in Japanese, because a lot more can be said in fewer characters. You can read a lot faster. Maybe some of that is believable, but I don't get the point of explaining things that don't need to be explained. I don't get the point of repeating yourself. It makes the game feel very much like it is a story designed for like perhaps kids, but then it's too dark of a story. It's like somebody watched the movie Titanic but didn't actually watch all of Titanic, just skimmed over it, and then watched the movie Saw and decided to mix those two ideas together, and then they read several conspiracy theories on the internet and threw those ideas into the storyline also. It is a rather crazy tale. There's actually even a gameplay feature that gets kind of replaced and disabled later on towards the true path ending, which is a problem because the game has this adventure mode where it doesn't really tell you what the characters are thinking or what they're saying or doing. That's it. And then novel mode where you do get those kind of narrations and descriptions. So you pretty much have to play the whole game in novel mode when you can, but then they disable novel mode near the end. And I think they probably did it because they just needed another button. Or the section I'm in is some added DLC, and that seems insane to add DLC to a visual novel instead of just making a sequel. Honestly, half of this game could have been left on the cutting room floor and brought to a sequel. There's way too many characters. There's way too much backstory. There's way too much of everything. And it's not like it's even annoying to play it. It's just emotionally draining. Attention span draining. Now, I definitely am not the type that reads books. I read a ton online. So I do read a lot of text. When I'm programming something or doing a project like that, I'm reading a ton of technical stuff. But just sitting down to a light novel or a short story or a novel, light novels being more of a Japanese thing, and definitely 999 feels like it should have been a light novel or an anime series instead of a video game. If it was an anime series, then it would be very logical for there to be this system where they kind of recap what happened just a couple hours previous in gameplay. But yeah, I don't know. I really can't relate enough to novel readers to think that they would like this story either. As far as my understanding of novels is that it's a lot of people who read books, at least in the West, read popular books, and the books are often not very well written. I would even say that for like the beloved Harry Potter series. Those books are probably not well written from a like novelist perspective. I'd say that's true for probably a lot of the Stephen King novels too. There's just a lot of trash out there, but the standards aren't that high, so people can get away with that. And I think there probably is just this voracious appetite for more and more written entertainment if you are a reader. And I'm not saying that Stephen King books or Harry Potter books are as bad as like low effort fan fiction or things like that, but yeah, I don't feel like it has been as polished as well as it has been. And some of that might literally just be the fact that like great novels in the past have just been filtered through the nostalgia of time and have been edited and reprinted and edited again. And certainly if you were Arthur Conan Doyle writing the Sherlock Holmes stories, that you probably had maybe some more free time than what a modern person who can be easily distracted with the internet or TV would have. So yeah, you often see when authors are trying to motivate themselves to write, they try to remove all the distractions and just type on old-fashioned typewriters because they don't want those distraction possibilities to happen. As for 999, I think this person, whoever created the game, was a very deep reader, but I think it kind of, but he wasn't, I don't think he was particularly a good author in general, because there's definitely some ideas that should be in a different novel instead of falling in love with those ideas. The author of 999 is failing to follow the advice I have heard, the kill your babies concept when being creative, is that you've got to be willing to just give up on concepts, put them on the back burner, use them later, and not fall in love with something, and continue writing it. In a weird way, that before the writer's strike, that NBC show Heroes, not the reboot, is kind of like 999, in that there's a bunch of people and they're in different places, jumping around. There actually isn't any jumping around in 999. It's all just flashbacks and memories and repeating what you would have seen, and that probably would have helped if you could flash between what the other characters were doing and seeing, because there almost certainly were many sections where the main player was just getting told what happened when the main character wasn't in the room. But honestly, it really is just editing. It's a major editing problem, and I don't expect that I wouldn't run into other visual novels that kind of had the same problem. I think there's a high chance a lot of them are going to have editing issues. But if you were playing this game on the Nintendo DS where it first came out in Japan, and you were commuting on the train playing it, it would probably take you like half a school year, like half a year in general, to get through the whole story. And that at that point is the only reason it would even start to make sense that you would want the elements of the repetition that I'm seeing, is that they're just assuming somebody would play the game and then play it for a couple hours and then put it away for a day and then come back in a couple hours. But that wouldn't really work either as a good gameplay experience, because it's not going to really address some of the other issues with the game, and it's going to just make it harder and harder to remember what's going on, which would be a problem, because you kind of do need to know what's going on. The puzzles and the escape the room sections of 999 don't add anything to the game. They could have been completely removed for how long the story is, and it probably should have just been a full experience as a visual novel solely. And that's a weird thing to say. I definitely going into 999 wanted it to be more of an escape the room game with light story to medium story. Instead, I've got an extremely heavy story with too many characters, so it's hard to relate to the characters because you don't spend enough time with them. Maybe there's some tricks you could have done differently. You could have, since you have the player play through the game at least 7 times, you could potentially have edited things in a different way where you played the game as different characters to see how the story played out from their perspective. There's a lot of sections where you see something and then it just gets repeated later on, so you could have definitely avoided that. There's a lot of times where characters ask for things to be explained, or more often the main character volunteers to explain something when the better response is, we don't have time for that, I'll explain it to you later. They definitely could integrate the action sequences better with the conversation sequences instead of people just coming to a stop in a hallway effectively. Like, they'll go from running in hallways to people coming to a stop and having a conversation to going back to running through the same hallway. Or they'll you'll be in an escape room trying to escape, you'll find an item, then you'll go to a conversation for an hour potentially, and then you go back to trying to escape the escape room. It would be so nice if it was more of a case where you were just wandering around looking for things, trying to solve the puzzles while people were talking to you. So then you could have to pay attention to what was being said, or you can ignore what's being said and just continue to have some interactivity during those parts. And honestly, I don't have too much to even say more about 999 because it will get too dangerously to spoiling things, and I am just kind of drained, as it were, for the fact of the way the game is designed, that it's just removing all of my desire to even continue to play it. But I'm far too deep into the game, just far too deep into the game to decide that I would that I would rage quit. That's really just not an option at all. So yeah, I'm just gonna have to put up with it for a little bit longer, maybe as much as even 4 hours longer of gameplay, and then that will be it for 999. The series is going to run horribly long, and the episodes themselves were already going to be an hour and a half plus, so I knew it was going to be super long, and it's not very horrific. So the only true horror of putting this in the Halloween month of October, which in all honesty it's going to surpass the Halloween month and just be a game that is covered for like Halloween and November and possibly December. But yeah, the only true horror around the game, other than the psychological horror of the story, that's not really that much, is going to be the horror of just how long it takes. And this is biting into my time, certainly, as far as what I was planning on recording for October. Like, I still need to play a AAA game, at least one AAA game. The Evil Within 2. I need to play that and have that scheduled and ready to go for October. Of course, we're not that close to October, but that needs to happen. And then I ideally would want to play a smaller game too, one more smaller horror game for October. But I don't know if I'm going to have 2 or 3 things scheduled, particularly for October, as this is the way this is going to come out during October. And I don't know if this isn't going to just end up with even The Evil Within potentially running into November. And I don't think there will be much of a theme otherwise, as far as November and December. Like, I don't think there's going to be any real theme to whatever games I play for those months. I'm still working on the concept of being awake at the right time and streaming at this time. So, yeah, I'm still trying to make those things happen. Which means I need to probably kind of wrap up here a little bit, not anytime soon, but I need to not lollygag too much. We need to cover the news. Since it was Memorial Day weekend in the United States, there wasn't a lot of news. And while I did start this episode saying I saw a couple of video game companies tweet about Memorial Day, that the vast majority of them didn't bother, and I think that's fair enough. Like, you can make a very high argument and realistic argument that there is a large number of veterans that enjoy and play video games. And certainly it wouldn't be terrible if PlayStation or Microsoft or even Nintendo said, this Memorial Day we're donating 100 or 1,000 Nintendo Switches, Xboxes. Microsoft in particular would be the best one to donate Xboxes to veterans. Let's see. That's about as much as I think they can do. But I didn't see anything like that. Instead, you just get kind of hollow appreciation.
Savagery loves company.
And certainly I can get political and point out the hypocrisy of the United States and how terrible their Veterans Affairs system is, and how terrible they treat veterans and active service servicemen, active service military people. So they can have all the national holidays they want. If they really wanted to treat the people right, they should treat the people right year round. But I don't want to go into a big rant there. Let's see. You know, I think this is probably a fair enough one to concede. I don't see myself winning here. So let's just play. Because of 999, I've been unable to really get around to resetting my Chrome browser, which I could do. That really has nothing to do with 991. But I haven't been able to install Windows Update. I haven't been able to do the Steam Spring Cleaning event, which there's only 3 days left. It really has just sucked out all the energy. That on top of just being incredibly inefficient nowadays as far as trying to get anything done, between having back pain and just being exhausted from spending all that energy feeling all that back pain, or just being exhausted from insomnia or some other reason. So I'm falling behind in even the non-YouTube content, and I'm way falling behind as far as YouTube content. Like, it was several months ago that I pretty much abandoned the schedule that I was trying to maintain of having 2 or 3 shows air on a time slot. If anything, though, that may have actually helped my channel, although I don't know if me reducing the number of videos that air on a daily basis helped my channel more than it just being a case of people just were busy during the first quarter of the year, and now people are finally getting out of school and getting kind of settled with their lives, as it may be with all the home quarantining going on. Anyways, we have a game on Steam here called Run or Fight, which looks pretty bad. It's 59 cents, English and Russian. We may start to see a few more Russian troll games and low effort games. It does seem like some level of barrier has been broken as far as the bad games coming back to Steam. I don't know if perhaps Valve was giving people the cold shoulder if they'd take like a look at the game and decide it was garbage and then not bother to respond for a while. I kind of feel like Valve should always give these bad game developers the cold shoulder. But now they seem to be like more settled in. We're starting to see more garbage games, more adult games, more asset flips, more troll games. Would be really funny if somebody at Valve has run the numbers and they like know that they won't be profitable this quarter if they don't allow in a certain number of troll games and low effort games. Probably not the case though. I imagine Valve makes plenty of money and they're doing perfectly fine. And I don't think the bean counters over at Valve are the people in charge. If I was to venture a guess. Next we have a game on Steam here called Devil's Dream, which looks like a low effort asset flip horror game. None of these screenshots are highlighting the game particularly well. This is $1.19 discounted, English only. I did see an article talking about how Brazil is like now the second most infected country, and I imagine people in Brazil might say that they're not infected with COVID-19 at all. So to each their own there, but if it does turn out that there's continued decline of the population or the quality of life in Brazil, I think we will probably see a high uptick in the bad quality Brazil games, the low effort Brazilian games that we've seen put on Steam, followed by a more consistent development of lesser and lesser of that. Like once people are so desperate that trying to put a asset flip on Steam isn't even worth their time anymore, I think we'll stop seeing so many low effort games that have this tendency to support English and then Portuguese Brazil and then nothing else. Unfortunately, I don't think I can honestly say that there is an actual video game industry in Brazil. There's a desire, clearly, for something like that to exist, and there definitely are people who can program at least low effort video games, but they haven't established any real quality. And kind of in the same way that I've yet to see a really good Chinese game come out. Not that that can't happen or that it won't happen, it's just it has yet to be seen as happening. Speaking of Chinese games, here we have one with just a bunch of Asian characters, and if I was to guess, this is a visual novel with multiple endings where you are dating Chinese, traditional Chinese women. You can see there's a lot of text here, again indicating it's a Chinese game. It's early access for $10.79, and yeah, Chinese language only. Yep, does not particularly look good, but definitely not the worst one I've seen either. Let's see. Next, we have a game that's a bunch of Asian characters. A Perfect Day for White Dolphin. This is probably a Chinese game too, from the looks of it. Kind of asset flippy, little chibi characters, sort of chibi characters. I don't even know if there's a better descriptor for that. Very dark, and doesn't seem like there's much here. They're saying it's a horror puzzle adventure game. English isn't supported again. $4.19 Chinese. So I don't think that there's been any real Chinese holiday that would explain these Chinese games coming out on Steam, but would explain the slight increase in Chinese games coming out on Steam is that Steam has rolled out its Chinese censored version of the Steam client. So yeah, and rightfully so. Some people have criticized them for getting in bed with China and that censors idea. Particularly video game companies have no business trying to do business in China. It's just not gonna happen. Like, no way. You're an artistic field that is built around showing new and interesting and thus slightly non-traditional ideas and concepts. So undoubtedly the establishment of the Chinese government is not going to like you much, and they're going to try and censor it. So what is the point of getting in bed and doing business with the Chinese government and having a Steam client when the entire lineup of games that will be allowed on the Steam client will be incredibly few, and they will all be incredibly bad, like government propaganda more than anything else, or just incredibly bad games in general. Meanwhile, because Valve is not a Chinese company, the competitors will have their own game storefronts. Tencent, for instance, will have their own, probably already does have its own game front. There's one called Wii Game that might be in China. Maybe that's Japan. So those storefronts will enjoy having gotten to market first and being advantaged. So yeah, it's just dumb. Chinese players that want to play Chinese games should just VPN out to play the regular Steam, and most of them still will. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Deeproot Manor, which is suffering from dark screenshot syndrome. Looks like it's they're tagging it as an RPG adventure with horror and violence. I guess it's an adventure game from the looks of it. It kind of looks like an RPG Maker game. It's $7.64, and it's English and Italian. So, yep, it doesn't look good, unfortunately. There we go. And kill that. And play that. And do that. Well, I think I have enough here to win. If I play this. And play this. And then I just attack with this and this. And then I can just go ahead and activate that. Or just wait for him to concede. Either or. We totally want to get to platinum. Odds of us getting above platinum are really low. But if we got even up one rank above platinum, that would be nice. I guess we are now suited to do this on Wednesday. Which should be nice. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Dark Story Online, which looks like an RPG game that probably wasn't made in RPG Maker, but you do seem to have some kind of generic characters. We can see that this is rated mixed already. It's free to play MMO with in-app purchases, but it requires a third-party EULA and account, English and Spanish. So it's just got too many caveats there. I did not want to keep that. I wanted the mulligan. Well, I might not win this one. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Royal Rescue SRPG, which I guess means strategic RPG. This does kind of look like it was made in RPG Maker and does look particularly boring. It's $1.79 discounted. Whole bunch of languages, apparently full audio, allegedly full audio support for them. Yeah, another game not making it to the fall list. Thinking of the fall list and the wish list, yeah, I am gonna have to rethink all the visual novels that are on my wish list. I think I can kind of fairly just leave them there and just know in the back of my mind I'll probably never buy them. I'm still fine with owning visual novels, even if I'm not going to cover them, and just supporting that part of the industry that I want to see continue to exist while not actually engaging in it myself. In the same way that I would be happy donating to a zoo while even if I didn't bother to go to a zoo, or donate to a museum even if I never bothered to go to that said museum or library or anything like that. Those are things I would like to still see exist in visual novels. Clearly have high popularity amongst people, and so they should exist. And ideally I would potentially even want to be able to vote with my dollar and promote good visual novels over low effort bad visual novels. I guess it would be funny to find somebody that played visual novels and then rage quit them and never actually finish the story. But I bet there's a decent number of people like that. I bet there's a decent number of people that go out and buy books and try and read the books and then they don't actually finish them. Very high numbers of people that were gifted 50 Shades of Grey series and didn't actually read them. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Gunfire Reborn, which looks like a shooter game. It looks kind of interesting, and it's rated very positively. It's early access for $10.43, single player with online co-op. Requires a third-party EULA. It's English and Chinese. For a Chinese game, this looks rather good. So I'm gonna put it on the fall list, and it still needs to come out of early access, of course. So yeah, there's still stuff going on. Yeah, I lost my train of thought and I tried to cover and I can't keep up that pretense. TechRaptor has that advertising agreement with Nutaku, so they have an article that says the Nutaku spring cleaning sale is very dirty, and they're showing a screenshot of a cat girl with some cleavage and a thong underwear showing. I'm still playing the Simpsons Tapped Out clone, for lack of a better explanation, called College Life from Nutaku. It's kind of a hurry up and wait type game, so it didn't, I haven't burned out on it anywhere as fast as I've burned out on a lot of games, because I've played up to a point, and now when I send a character off to, say, clean a garage, that takes 4 hours to happen, so you have to just wait for it to happen. So there are these artificial wait timers in the game that you could buy items and things to potentially use that as a you could buy the premium currency to skip certain actions, but that would be silly. So it does seem like it is a decent game to play if you want to play an adult game, although still not really a lot of adult content in it, and I don't think there ever will be. It'll be kind of interesting if I stick with College Life to see how often it actually gets updated and whether it continues to add things, because the thing about Simpsons Tapped Out is I played that for about a year or two, and it was just constantly adding more things you could decorate your neighborhood with, more plants and decorations and buildings and such. If it isn't the same and it's just the same basic 20 plants and the same decorations in general, then that would be very boring, and there would kind of not be a reason to keep playing. So yeah, the updates will be the thing that kills it. And in all fairness, I will say that Simpsons Tapped Out, after about a year or two, was so heavy on pushing you to buy things, and so many of the items that you would want to use to decorate had to be bought with the premium currency, and there was just so much stuff in general that it became overwhelming and just pointless. And yeah, sometimes I just stop going back to a game on my phone, and then that's that. After a week or so, I'll realize I haven't launched the app, and I'll just uninstall it then, which I did do for another game I was playing for about a week. I'm kind of, I think, also out of that phase where I'm going to be trying a lot of cell phone games, and I feel really stupid having played Gwent on the cell phone, because Gwent is also on Steam, so it would have been somewhat nice to instead make a quick look of it. Although Gwent on the cell phone plays differently than Gwent on Steam, so they are effectively two different games. If I can pull this off, this is crazy, but if I can pull this off, I have 5, 6, 7, 8. If I can get 2 more things on the field, I think I can win. As long as he doesn't get more health. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Mech Extermination Force. This is a game we've seen promoted before, or I've seen it promoted before. It's, I think, best shown as this video. You have these robots, and then you're in kind of a boss rush fight where you have to figure out the patterns and really take him on. And I don't know if there are any other sequences besides the boss rushes. I don't know if you're just going to fight a few bosses and then that is that. But apparently this has come out on Steam or out of early access. It doesn't have enough reviews yet, but I do recognize this. This is probably a great example of a game that got some pre-hype and how little that hype really matters at all. Because obviously people aren't wishlisting this and then immediately reviewing it positively. And any hype that I would have seen about this game, or any coverage I would have seen about this game, has long since been forgotten. It totally would be. I don't know what to really say about this, but PewDiePie re-uploaded, I guess, a deleted PewDiePie video, or the PewDiePie archive re-uploaded a PewDiePie video where he was playing the cat lady. This would have been a really dark and scary game, so I could see why PewDiePie would have pulled it off. Now that PewDiePie is a little bit back to streaming on YouTube, maybe there's a reason that things would be different. I don't think so, really. I think more than likely PewDiePie probably pulled the original version of the video, and this PewDiePie archive is almost certainly not affiliated with PewDiePie at all. Let's see, what can I do? Basically nothing. Yeah, PewDiePie is still playing like Minecraft and Terraria though in his streaming on YouTube deal. And YouTube gaining PewDiePie and then losing Joe Rogan, they really lost out there. It will be interesting to see what happens with Spotify, and if it does actually become a competitor to YouTube. That would be really nice. I'm hoping that the threat alone would convince YouTube to start treating its content creators that it still has better, and instead of them just constantly trying to appeal to the established TV people who will never really be successful on YouTube. YouTube will almost certainly fail before it would fail almost certainly completely before that. There is also another thing that might cause YouTube to fail, and it would probably be very premature to say this is guaranteed to happen, but a FTC commission has come out and said the DMCA is bad. You need to pay to Congress. They've released a result that says the DMCA is bad. You need to pass laws that actually make it even worse. So they're basically trying to get rid of fair use, and the 512.13b, I think, is the exception of safe harbor exceptions for services like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. So I guess if those laws pass that way, which they probably won't, I guess at that point then YouTube would just have to shut down, and that's something a lot of people, including myself, are not capable of really dealing with. Like, I can't just all of a sudden decide to download the 5,000 plus videos I've uploaded, and if YouTube can't hold on to these videos, or can't afford to hold on to the videos, that would really suck. I think they probably hold on to everything you still had, but they probably make it work in such a way that nobody else could see it at all. And yeah, that would totally suck. On the other hand, if copyright gets so even more terrible in the United States, then I think you'll just have a lot more blatant, non-caring infringers out there. It really would just flood the courts, and the courts are already flooded with copyright cases that don't matter. Yeah, what they really need to do, if I was in charge, is I would pass a law to give moral rights of some sort to actual creators, more moral rights or some moral rights to actual creators, not people who are, and get rid of the idea of work for hire, or everything's work for hire and it all belongs to a corporation. It should be that anything artistic created is created by the creators, who is then licensing it in some way for a limited amount of time to the company. And then I would definitely lower the number of years the copyright lasts, and I would probably try to just create some kind of grant system. Honestly, that's probably the best solution, where instead of trying to create a system where people can make money by being creative, instead you would just have a grant system that went to anybody who wanted to do a creative thing to help fund their creation and keep them alive. Because capitalism is in general the number one killer to a creative art. It just does not make sense at all. Art should be free, and there should basically be very little to no copyright. The idea of a copyright only makes sense when you start throwing in corporations and capitalistic greed. And Arthur Conan Doyle, for instance, if he had all of his needs met, would probably be a lot happier if everybody could have read his books, versus having to fight people copying his books so that he could just make enough money to feed himself. Which I think Sir Arthur Conan Doyle probably could feed himself anyways, but that would be exactly how I would feel about it too. I don't think anybody's being realistic if they think that they're gonna go write the next great American novel and become a millionaire from that. I would much prefer, and you can even see it in the work I do. Like, the reason I put these videos up on YouTube is because I'd prefer more people to hear my ideas and watch my videos, not because I wanted to try and make money. It would have been nice if I made money on these videos, certainly. It still would be nice, but I really only want a living wage. I don't want to become a millionaire. And meanwhile, as a YouTube content creator, I'm constantly having to fight corporate greed of corporations like the Warner Brothers, who are constantly content IDing and putting ads and claiming all the revenue from the footage I made when covering Lego Batman or something like that. On top of plenty of scammers that don't even own the copyrights to the stuff they're claiming they own the copyrights to. Let's see. This here, and this here, and then block, and then heat this. And then put this back on the field. Then eat this. Then activate this. So I need to do one more damage next turn. I think I can do that. So unless he can find a way to do damage. Yeah, he could destroy my creature and then I'd be in trouble. But if he doesn't kill this guy, I can just attack for 3, then sacrifice him and put this on the field and do 1 damage. Next we have a game on Steam called Let Me Alone, Corona Zone. This is already rated as negative. It's obviously a dark screenshot asset flip horror game, just trying to capitalize. It says 84 cents. Like English, Chinese, and Russian. Clearly a troll game. He could have won, he just didn't play right. Meanwhile, here's where I start to get a little nervous, because if I can get one more victory. I saw someone do a cheap red deck build, mono red deck, and I probably should go back and try and build that mono red deck before I forget what cards were in it. By the way, I can already see the Humble Bundle tab. It's far away, but there's not going to be a lot here if we keep going through this. Here we have a game called Amber, AMBR, which looks like it's an asset flip game. This was a screenshot I saw that I thought this might be a game where you play as a young girl in the future going through like a VR MySpace type platform, or Facebook like platform, and then the story might go dark and it might be predators trying to put Amber in danger and you're controlling Amber and being naive. That might be an interesting story. That's what I dreamed up when seeing that one screenshot. From the looks of it, now that I've seen more and seeing this all just in Chinese or Asian letters, it probably is just an Avatar VR MMO type experience. Requires VR, it's free to play. Yeah, cross-player, multiplayer, and Japanese only, so yeah. It doesn't look like much. And I don't think that's really ever going to work. It's much more believable in my mind that somebody would tell a story of somebody having like a Second Life VR-like game, than it is believable that there will actually be a successful Second Life VR-like game that gains much popularity. They'll gain some, certainly, but not enough. Oh, that's not what I want to exile. That was dumb. That was really dumb. I should have exiled the land. Is there anything special about this card? No, not really. Next game we have on Steam is Meditation 2, Wisdom and Christian Art, which looks like a low effort RPG maker asset flip game I wouldn't even be surprised if this was like a Chinese game. $3.59 English and French. Yeah, nothing there. Like we've been through the religious type games for decades now, and people have tried to make religious style games and sell them, and not a single one has ever been good. The closest religious game that is slightly that has been slightly good would be something like Doom, that was set kind of based on Christianity, in the sense that demons are kind of based on Christianity, but nothing else. And there is kind of some weirdness there. Like, I could certainly see that maybe a lot of the California Western game developers intentionally bend over backwards to not put religious people or religion in their game when they probably should. Name one Christian character in a video game that's not a Christian video game. It's kind of hard to find it. You don't see people wearing rosaries or crosses or anything like that. Yeah, I just put death touch on the death touch. That was pointless. Like, it really wouldn't hurt to have somebody have those beliefs. It doesn't. The game doesn't need to center around that. But even in like Deus Ex Human Revolution, that's a great example of a series of stories that would have been better suited had some of the people who are getting these augmented limbs had like a religious belief that conflicted with that, or at least clashed with that, or caused some consternation or conflict mentally inside those characters, and there's just nothing like that happens. I don't know if it's really news, but Microsoft has open sourced GW Basic, which to GitHub, this would have been for like MS-DOS version 1.25 or 2.0. There's literally nothing these days that you would program with GW Basic or any form of Basic at all. If anything, you'd go to Scratch and use something like that, or even better, you could go to Python. Python's not a bad language to start learning programming in. Basic, I remember programming a few programs in Basic when I was in school, which just goes to show my computers that I was working on were particularly old. But it was definitely not a language that was well full of functions and features. I don't know if it had any functions at all, like in the sense that I don't think you could program and make your own functions. You almost certainly couldn't make classes. You almost certainly couldn't do half of the logical loops that you would expect. There probably was an if statement. I'm not sure if there was an else statement. There probably was no switch statements. There probably weren't any break statements where you could break out of a loop. There was definitely a go-to statement in Basic, and there was a lot of people that would program using go-to, and that really taught a lot of people to use go-to when they really should have never learned to use go-to, because it's bad. It's a bad way to program almost anything. Yeah, in a weird way, Basic probably did more harm than it did good for a lot of people to learn who were aspiring to be programmers. And I wonder if that might be the case with things like Scratch also, because Scratch is such a visual language. that it makes it programming seem too simplistic, and it makes programs seem too visual. So I don't know how well it really teaches somebody to actually set their expectations when they have to go use C# or something more complicated. Even HTML5 with JavaScript is going to be an incredibly text-based programming language and look nothing like programming with Scratch or any of those other visual introductory programming languages. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Galaxy and Turmoil. This is already rated mixed. Let's see. Looks like it's a first-person shooter space game. It's early access, free to play, but it's only online PvP and it's only English. And if it's already mixed reviewed, I think that pretty much guarantees that it won't ever gather enough of a fan base. It's from Frostwire Studios. Have they made anything else on Steam? Nope. LibRetro also has made a second YouTube channel called RetroArch Games or something, RetroArch Arcade or something like that. Basically, what they're going to start doing is making their official channel and their official announcements on the LibRetro YouTube page, and the RetroArch one is going to be more just video game footage of games being emulated. So if you don't want to see potentially hundreds of games running through an emulator, that kind of makes some sense. If you just want to get the announcement that an emulator has improved in some way. So you would either want to subscribe to both, or if you just want the Cliffs Notes version, subscribe to LibRetro's YouTube page only. Next, we have a game on Steam called Realm of Hero. This looks like it's a RPG game, like a JRPG game that's kind of a dungeon crawler. It's a little simplistic in the user interface, and the fact that it seems like every screen has a lot of items on this. It almost kind of feels like you're going through a more of an experience and more of a story, more of almost like a Princess Maker game than an actual RPG. Some of the art looks good as far as the characters, but they could just be pre-made assets. The enemies seem to only show up in one screenshot though, so there's some question here. This is $4.99, which makes it a little short. It almost feels like it's more of a roguelike. It says everything in this game, like JRPG, is random, and it's English only. And that's probably the thing that would kill this more than anything, is typically you don't want a JRPG experience, the role-playing part, if things are going to be randomized and it's roguelike. You wouldn't want to play the game multiple times. Random encounters are fine, but you would want some story and non-random elements too. And the fact that it's not supporting the Japanese language, and yet it's trying to look like a JRPG, makes me think that it very well may have been made by a Western person that does not understand the intricacies of making a good JRPG. So, yeah. I think we're done with that. I don't think that's making it to the fall list. TechRaptor has an article here. Nitromi, I guess that's how you spell that. Nitromi saves their Flash games library with an HTML5 emulator. It seems like more and more Flash game sites are figuring out ways to do that. Although I personally have to kind of question who really cares about Flash games anymore. Now that people's internet are better, now that there are cell phones where you can get free games that are way better than the 20 minutes of entertainment you might get from a Flash game. Like, I just don't think that's the scene. In the same way that I don't think webcomics are really a scene anymore, or MySpace isn't a scene anymore. I think as the generations pass and things are just going to be different, and you don't really need to go back and try and relive those elements, because you'll just be disappointed. I am not getting anywhere fast with this. Next game we have on Steam is called You and Me and Her, a love story, which seems to be like a menage a trois, or something like that, a three-way love triangle, or perhaps a less of a, well, in a love triangle, each character has some form of love for each other character, which sometimes is misunderstood, and sometimes you will have more of a competition story where there's two girls both fighting for the affections of one guy, but the two girls don't really have any form of love for each other of any sense, any kind of camaraderie. This is a visual novel, of course, tagged psychological horror, oddly, $26.99, full audio, Japanese and English. I'm gonna have to really think about this, but I've been saying I probably am not gonna have a lot of visual novels on the wish list. I think also you kind of run into the problem now that in a reevaluation, I don't think something that has the original Japanese voice acting, as much as I'm a snob about that in anime, I don't think that really works for a visual novel for me, because I still would have to read a lot. Like, I need full English voice acting for a visual novel to even start to fall down the path of potentially being acceptable, or something that I'd be capable of covering. I've lost here. Maybe we can do something like this. And then we could see. This has menace. This has lifelink, death touch. We can do this. Yep, so I held them off for one time, but that's about it. So yeah, I'm gonna really have to reevaluate the visual novels a lot. That probably wouldn't be a bad way. I don't even know if I can really sort my wish list. In fact, I'll try that. We'll just find that out in a second here. And see if I can get to my wish list and sort by types of games. And see if I could just reevaluate visual novels alone, or if I'm going to have to do a full wish list cleanup. Which probably it doesn't need a cleanup. So, let's mulligan that. Keep that. And get rid of that. Next game we have on Steam is called Thermo Sudoku, which seems like it's just Sudoku with slight modifications. I've seen some Sudokus that have started to do this with where there are lines that tell you new bits of information or different bits of information, making Sudoku a little bit more complicated. It's $4.99. It's English only. Let's look. Are any of the previous Sudoku games he's made reviewed well? Because that would be the case, wouldn't it? It would be, is this developer known for making decently rated Sudoku games? I guess the answer to that is yes. He has at least meeting the bare minimum standard. So I'll put it on the follow list and think about it. And then I'm gonna come over and let's see. Store wishlist. And then I'd have to sign in for that. So that's not gonna work. So, yeah. I'll have to investigate that on my own time later, if I can sort the wish list by visual novels. Otherwise, when I do the next follow list cleanup, and I just go through the follow list, I'll just have to be extremely willing to eliminate a lot of the visual novels, which I think is fine. It feels like Gamatsu pretty much took Memorial Weekend off. I imagine not a lot of the news happened over the weekend anyways, but we have very few articles from them. Here we have one for the PS4 and Switch. Blaster Master 0, 1, and 2 is coming to the PS4 on June 29th. So, yeah. I would almost attribute the lack of news articles from Gamatsu more to Japan just shutting down more and more because of the pandemic instead of Japan taking Memorial Day off. There is this slight danger in having a day like Memorial Day in the United States, considering how so many of our conflicts have been with other countries. The UK kind of has a great twist on that, where they just honor all servicemen who, regardless, and I think they pretty much honor all servicemen who were on both sides of the conflicts even. So it's such a nebulous concept that it's pretty much impossible to not support the holiday that they have in the UK, because it's a general concept of good. Or yeah. Whereas if people in the United States had a specific holiday just celebrating veterans from like Vietnam, there probably would be a lot of people who would have hot takes or controversial opinions to spout because of the controversy, how controversial the Vietnam War was. Or if we had a holiday just celebrating, well, we do have Independence Day, which is basically celebrating going to war with the UK, and the UK's not super pleased with that happening every year, I'm sure. They don't probably really care, but I bet they're not thrilled by it. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. No, Spider-Man isn't one of June's PlayStation Plus games. Apparently there was a rumor that it was. Obviously it isn't. So, Yeah, apparently that needed to be mentioned. Next, we have a game on Steam called Not Their Will, a 3D top-down twin-stick shooter. From the looks of it, by the description, does not look very good, not very polished. Dark screenshot syndrome. Free, so I guess the price is right. English only. We are running into a problem now, and I think for Magic, in particular, since I kind of know I'm not going to stick with Magic, I should have sacrificed that at some point. In the long run, I'm not going to stick with Magic, and since Magic is just getting more and more expensive as far as the paper Magic version, and that's causing people to be upset, so that would be a distant secondary reason. The fact that I'm not getting 15 wins in these streams, I think is something that I'm just gonna start kind of chilling on, like, and just not caring about it, instead of trying to spend the rest of the day trying to get victories. It's annoying, frankly, and difficult to get 15 victories, and I really would just like to see that element go away and the daily rewards be more realistic. Next we have a game on Steam called Merc, which is another dark screenshot game. It looks like it's a space shooter or a top-down twin-stick shooter. I can't even really tell, it's so dark. It's $11.89, which is way too expensive, and it's English only. So we have one that doesn't untap. 3. And we've lost. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Elastomania. I may have missed several games that came out. I don't think so. According to my Twitter feed, I haven't missed any games, but it does kind of feel like I haven't seen as many as there should be. This almost feels like an attempt at a Paper Mario game, but when you look at just how much of this background is just repeated tile sets, and how much of this game is just nothing, yeah, there's not a game here. Definitely not $9.49 at a discount of 5% off worth. English only too. So this Archiplague, Plagueor. Yeah, and we're just falling down instead of getting wins. We need to kill 2 creatures, and we've only gotten 3 wins. And this will probably be the last game we play. Open Critic has an article here. Metroid Prime Trilogy coming next month according to a store listing. That would be nice, certainly. It definitely would be a lot easier just to rebuy the Metroid Prime Trilogy and play it on the Switch than it would be to pull out a Wii or Wii U and try and play those games that way. I think, though, the bigger issue certainly would be they need to at least talk about the development of the next Metroid game that was supposed to come out that was supposed to be somewhat in the Metroid Prime style. And yeah, I just haven't heard any talk about that, and it just feels like the game is in development hell, and it doesn't feel like Nintendo has cared about the Metroid series in a rather long time, if ever. It very well could be that they never really cared about the Metroid series after, like, Super Metroid. And that's believable. Next, we have a game on Steam here called The Way to Yatra. This looks like it's a kind of badly animated platformer where you have a spear throwing ability, which spear throwing ability is an interesting idea, certainly, but it doesn't look like there's enough of a game or enough of a polish here to make me really want to play it. The tile set is a little too generic. Let's see. It's free to play, so I guess the price is right. And it's English and Spanish. So I can't say I hate that. Let's go play that. And then attack. Gamatsu has an article here for the PC, PS4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X. I was looking at what the price of an Xbox One would cost. Not an Xbox One X, but you know, getting a standard Switch right about now is more expensive, it seems, than buying an Xbox One just standard, or an Xbox One S. And I really have no business buying an Xbox One S, but it would potentially let me plug all of my 360 games into it and get forward compatibility. But that really isn't worth the investment, because I still wouldn't be playing games on it, on that platform. Whereas if I got a Switch, I definitely would play Switch. I would find time to play it and play the Nintendo games. There's also the beauty of potentially playing Nintendo games and not covering them, because you'd get content ID'd anyways for all of that. Regardless, the story here is Sherlock Holmes Chapter 1 has been announced for all of those platforms. Frogware's developers open world detective adventures due out 2021. So, if I recall correctly, there was one company that was kind of in a legal fight with another company for the Sherlock Holmes titles at one point. And apparently some company now has the works, the beginnings of a Sherlock Holmes story. But this is oddly an open world detective adventure game. And they're going to try and sell it episodically by the looks of it with Chapter 1. And that's going to be weird. Parts of the problems with the previous Sherlock Holmes games were that they kind of were in a bad engine, and they kind of were putting gameplay around a story that didn't really coordinate well with that. So I don't know if an open world Sherlock Holmes story fixes that problem or exacerbates that problem, really. It probably just makes it worse, because
Those who cannot perceive beyond
if I was thinking of a Sherlock Holmes story, I would think very linear, very story based. I wouldn't think that you could just wander around an open world looking for clues or questioning people or doing anything like that.
Keep an open mind.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Yorin, which looks like a high fantasy game or an asset flip game. Take your pick, I suppose. A lot of these screenshots are not loading. It's early access and it requires VR, and it's $17.99. English only with full audio. Let's see, cutting edge VR magic game. Cast spells by drawing rune gestures. We've seen several attempts at this, but I'll put it on the follow list and see if people respond to Yarn. I've seen like 4 or 5 attempts that play as a magic caster in VR and draw runes or spells or sigils to cast the spells, and I'm not sure any of them matter. TechRaptor seems to be spreading out more into opinion pieces and editorials. In a weird way, this might actually convince me to stop using TechRaptor as a source, because the one thing I was really liking about TechRaptor is that they seem to mostly stay out of doing anything that wasn't just direct video game news or reviews. Regardless, though, they have a article here that's called Bullet Points, which I guess is the beginning of a new series. Return to Castle Wolfenstein Supernatural Atmosphere. The Return to Castle Wolfenstein game, if it was remastered and a reasonable game to play with reasonable controls these days, I would have really liked to play more of it when I spotlighted it, but yeah, the controls were bad and the graphics were bad, and it was obvious that you didn't need to play Return to Castle Wolfenstein to play the reboot of the Wolfenstein series. And now we're starting to get to a dangerous point where there's a decent argument to say you don't need to play the Wolfenstein reboot series. Really is just going to come down to whether that third game in the series, excluding the game where you play mostly as the daughters of BJ Blazkowicz. Yeah. If that third game of the proper Wolfenstein series doesn't catch people's attention, it's going to be hard to justify covering it any further, because the second game, even though it was incredibly hyped, did not get well received marks, and it's even hard to discuss it that way because the second game in the reboot series was actually the go back in time and fight zombies game. So what I mean is the New Order, the Old Blood, ignore the Old Blood one, and then Wolfenstein 2, the New Colossus or something like that. This guy's just drawing cards like crazy. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Hawken Revival launches with offline bot play. So, if you like the 2017 mech first-person shooter Hawken, apparently it's been relaunched, or a fan server has been made. Sadly, I am not going to make it to platinum at this rate. Like, I just worked my way up, and then the game decides, no, you've made it far enough, and then I work my way back down. Alright, we have about 10 things. TechRaptor had the same article about the Metroid Prime Trilogy, rumored to release on June 19th. So, 2 people are talking about that rumor. That doesn't mean anything. Gamatsu has an article, Space Dogfighter game DEP, Battle of Jove. It has been announced for PC. Yeah, and it just looks like a space shooting game that I don't think I'd ever enjoy any of those. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article talking more details for the next Mary Skelter game, Mary Skelter Finale, which anime girls in the dungeon crawler game, I believe. So, yep. Slightly lewdly drawn anime girls. That's Mary Skelter for you. Speaking of lewd Japanese game creators, or Japanese game creators that often make lewd games, Tencent is, I believe, in the works to gain a majority share through one of their subsidiaries of Marvelous Entertainment, makers of the Senran Kagura games, more than anything, most recognizable through that. And yeah, I think the Senran Kagura games in particular, they kind of indicated that they were going to be done with those anyways. But yeah, Tencent being in charge or being a major shareholder there, it would be weird. It probably wouldn't be for the better. Anyways, we have a game on Steam here called Hope Ringers, which looks like it's a tabletop strategic placement game. It doesn't look particularly well designed because it's going for the aesthetic that it is actual people playing on an actual tabletop, where I would prefer it just to zoom in and show me a fictional world. This game is free, English only, so don't really have to decide. If that looks interesting, then check it out. Here's the article I was just talking about. Marvelous enters into capital and business alliance with Tencent subsidiary. They purchased 20% stake in Marvelous. So, Marvelous will be using the funding to develop its existing intellectual property, such as Story of the Seasons, into stronger brands, as well as to launch new properties such as Daemon Ex Machina at a global level over the next 3 years. This is not the first time Marvelous has entered into a business agreement with Tencent. In March 2019, Marvelous licensed the Story of Seasons property to Tencent to develop a smartphone-based game off the franchise. Okay. Yeah. So, the way Gamatsu writes that, it's not as big of a deal as the way I've heard it reported by other people. But yeah, 20% might be a majority stakeholder for a lot of companies. And Gamasutra, I think pretty much there's one article here I'm seeing from Gamasutra, but it's not worth mentioning because it's just kind of an educational developer article, so I don't know if they have any news that we're going to even talk about today. Next, we have a game on Steam called Nuclear Wipeout, which looks like a dice rolling marble game where you play as a dice instead of a marble. Otherwise, it still seems to be a very low effort marble game. It's free, English only. That is definitely not enough of a twist to convince people to buy that. Here, Bloomberg says Tencent to become largest shareholder in Japanese Marvelous. Let's see. And is there anything more that Bloomberg News has to say other than they just have a ton of ads? I don't go to Bloomberg very often, otherwise I would have cleaned up this all of these pop-ups and all of this garbage. Blocked ads on it. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Azure, which is in color blue, and you can see there's a lot of blue happening here. This is like a cheap Chinese platforming game. They're trying, but they clearly don't have enough animators or programmers here to make a decent game that deserves to be on Steam. This is labeled as a student project, but even at this point, I don't think I could promote this or do a spotlight as a student project, because this really is just simplistic. Let's see. Final project for my college freshman year. Well, I don't think his college is probably expecting enough out of you for your final project for the first year, but maybe there's a lot of code underlying that. It has a third-party EULA though for a free game. That is crazy. So yeah, can't really highlight a game like that. I can only really highlight games that are slightly decent student projects. Next, we have a game on Steam called Neon Beat Rider, which is just a line rider music game. It's just nothing here new. $6.69, English only, full audio allegedly. Let's see. Komatsu has a article here. Otomate new titles video presentation is set for July, a replacement for the canceled Otomate Party of 2020. So young maiden visual novels. Or I think that's what they were going to talk about. They say Otomate is the Otome game branch of Idea Factory. Yeah, so Otomo young maiden visual novels, known for titles such as Code Realize, Codex Malice, and Hakoki, among others. So, yeah, they seem like they're still going to try and do business, but it's going to be video presentations and live streams instead of having actual events. Actual events has been the way they've done this. This next game is tagged as having sexual content and mature ratings, so let me make sure it's YouTube family friendly. And it looks like it is. So here we have a game on Steam called Hot and Lovely 3, which is rated positively and again tags sexual content. From as far as I can tell, this is just an asset flip game with some anime girls in the background, and there's something like a either paper folding mini game that you have to do, or you are just cutting out images of the paper. But yeah, there's nothing here really. This is $1.59. Says it supports a ton of language and then has an adult patch to put in the adult content. Yeah, the RetroArch channel is just called RetroArch on YouTube. Turns out. Gamatsu has an article here. Gunbird 2 is coming to PC on June 10th. So another shoot 'em up coming to PC. I guess a lot of the shoot 'em ups probably were being sold on like Vita or PlayStation. And now that they don't really have a home there and they're not really being supported there, it wouldn't be surprising if we start to see more PC shoot 'em ups because of that. Gamatsu has an article here. Shinobu Koi Utsusu Banka Aya Imaki is coming to Switch on August 27th. It's currently for the PS4. This looks like this is Ninja Guys in like a visual novel. Like, if that's what I would guess from it, is that it is an Idea Factory visual novel where you're maybe playing as the girl, dating the guys, considering how there's more guys than girls. Let's see. What do we have left? We have like two more tabs, and then that's pretty much it. And I don't even feel the need to go through my Twitter feed, so we'll just check the Humble Bundle. I think getting away from adding that extra 10 minutes at the end of every stream is a good idea. So here we have a game called Crazy Critters Combat Cats, which, yeah, just looks like a low effort Unity game. $1.79, English only. Yep. And then let's see, I think we already talked about that. So that was it. Yeah. So then that brings me to the Humble Bundle store, and we'll see the Humble Indie Bundle is about to end, and I didn't get around to buying that, and I don't think I will. Which is fine, because I don't think there's a great offering for the Humble Indie Bundle. And the Humble Bandai Namco Bundle is still going. It has 7 days, but that's not particularly a great deal unless you want to buy the full top tier on that one for $15. And there are no other game bundles. So yeah, that pretty much says that we are done. Is it really worth it to go back to the Twitter feed and see if there's any new news? I don't think so. On this Memorial Day in particular, there's not going to be any new video game news. I feel like there's a couple things that I saw that I didn't mention, so I might check a different source on my cell phone. And yeah, I have here 3 mainline Toho shoot 'em up games are coming to Steam. That's basically the only thing I think we have to say on that. So yeah, I guess I've covered everything. That's going to be it for the stream. I theoretically will play more off screen and try and get 15 victories and continue to try to be down the path of making sure I get all of the rewards in this mastery. But I probably am going to try to get back to finishing 999 also, because that is just taking forever. Yeah. Again, that's it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.